We would like to welcome everyone to today's web event titled, Taking Supplier Diversity to the Next Level. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to Ms. Sigrid Senemod, Diversity Best Practices. Ms. Senemod, you may go ahead.
Thank you, Erica. Welcome, everyone, from DBP. We're very honored to have three top experts for today's web seminar in supplier diversity. Let me present today to you Christine Simmons. She's with Magic Johnson Enterprises. You will hear from her first, followed by Suzanne Martinez, Intel Corporation. And our final speaker is Dan Robinson with Xerox Corporation. Before we get started, please mark your calendars for our upcoming events. We have our next session come up. It's called Beyond the Business Case, Leveraging Diversity for Innovation and Client Success. That is in July, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and hosted by Johnson Controls and Harley-Davidson. We currently have a tremendous response to this, and we are still expecting or accepting RSVPs for the next 10 days. Our next flagship event is coming up in Washington, D.C., at which time we will be honoring 7 CEOs on October 6th and 7th in Washington. So please mark your calendars for these key dates. It is now my great pleasure to introduce you today's moderator, Christine Simmons. Christine is VP of Strategic Alliances for Magic Johnson Enterprises and is responsible for identifying new areas of partnership and business opportunities for all lines of business as a valued added diverse supplier to Fortune 500 companies. She also collaborates in the development of strategies for co-branded activities of strategic alliances and new lines of business through our private equity fund. Ms. Simmons brings with her nearly 10 years of supplier diversity industry experience. Prior to joining the Magic Johnson Enterprises team, Christine was a manager of supplier diversity and sustainability for the Walt Disney Company. In this role, she was responsible for supporting the media networks, marketing, studio, and new media technology teams in identifying qualified, competitive, diverse suppliers for sourcing opportunities. Through these categories, Simmons influenced over $135 million in diverse spend. Christine, welcome.
Thank you, Sigrid, and thank you, everybody, for your time today and for joining us on this very exciting panel and discussion regarding supplier diversity and taking it to the next level. I am honored and humbled to be a part of this and to be able to present to you our two panelists who together are an amazing duo of experience and expertise, which we will definitely get to very shortly. I wanted to kind of start this off with talking about how we look at taking supplier diversity to the next level and just a few discussion topics which we'll cover throughout today's session. So for me, I'll talk about a little bit an introduction of what's next for supplier diversity and just give you a very brief introduction of our organization solely as an example of what we feel and what we've seen as where supplier diversity is going, or two aspects of where supplier diversity is going, I should say. And then both Susan and Dan will also give us explanations of their fantastic programs that they both have at Intel and Xerox, respectively, really highlighting some key areas which, too, will help take supplier diversity to the next level. For Susan, she'll talk about how your metrics measure up and talking about reporting and data and what that means to your supplier diversity program, as well as going global and taking your programs there. Dan, while also experienced with global support and a global program, will talk to us about return on investment and the bottom line and what that means for supplier diversity going forward. So we're going to jump right in. So I talked to you briefly that I wanted to share with you a brief introduction of Magic Johnson Enterprises and kind of what's next. And what we see as what's next is strategic alliances, joint ventures, and partnerships. And I know that in the supplier diversity world, we've been talking about these concepts for some time. And originally, we much talked about MBE to MBE or MWBE to MWBE joint ventures and partnerships. But we're seeing a slight shift in that paradigm, and so I'll highlight that today. We will also talk about private equity and investing in diverse firms and how that's truly helping to grow wealth within diverse communities, which at the end of the day, I think is our end game. So our corporate mission here at Magic Johnson Enterprises is to serve as a catalyst for community and economic empowerment by making available high-quality entertainment products and services that answers the demands of ethnically diverse urban communities. Our company motto is, "We are the communities we serve." I wanted to talk about this because as we talk about economic empowerment and being a catalyst, in my opinion, that's one of the key things that is important when we talk about offering opportunities for diverse suppliers to compete for contracts. When we look at Magic Johnson Enterprises and our structure, there are two areas that I really kind of wanted to focus on. Some of you may be familiar with Magic Johnson. Mr. Johnson's speaking engagements and his appearances on ESPN as a sports analyst. We also have a consulting arm. But the other two areas which we've really focused a lot on and what I was brought on the team to talk about or to work on is ventures and strategic alliances that we have. We've done ventures with Sodexo and created a joint venture called Sodexo Magic, which is a leader in the food service industry. We provide complete food service opportunities or offerings as well as maintenance, laundry, everything that you everything that you need in order to make sure that your facilities are running well and your employees have a fantastic experience when they dine and while they're working. Another joint venture and alliance that we have is Magic Workforce Solutions, and that's with Adecco. And in doing so, we were able to leverage the operational infrastructure of Adecco and the industry knowledge and expertise that they bring to the table, but yet have our own entity which targets minority employees and talent and bringing them to the limelight for Fortune 500 clients. And so those are two of the areas where we've really seen how strategic alliances, joint ventures, really work well to take it to the next level and be able to provide services, jobs, and create wealth in the community at a much higher level than maybe if we were to build it from scratch. Finally, the capital management department, and specifically our Ukaipa Johnson Fund, is a private equity fund which we've raised $550 million solely to invest in minority-owned firms or firms that have a lot of minority employees or those that are housed in minority communities. And again, private equity really allows you to expand the growth of an organization, provide the capacity needed to compete on a global scale, and really look at providing services in a competitive manner, but yet and still being able to focus on the diverse community and, as I said, build wealth. So for those of you, and I saw a lot of familiar names on the registration list and those that have logged on, and we've all been around for some time, and I kind of thought last night about where we've been in supplier diversity, and we often have these taglines and these focus points which we always said, this is why we do this. This is the business case. And it started early on in the 60s and 70s talking about meeting quotas. Then we moved to, well, it's the right thing to do. And then we moved away from it's the right thing to do because we thought we needed to create an even playing ground. And then after that, we talked about assisting the minority entrepreneur. And finally, more recently, we've talked about the opportunity to compete. And many of these still hold true. But I think where we're going is talking about building true wealth in diverse communities. We can do that by assisting the minority entrepreneur, but that's not the end game. The end game is to create living wages, to create wealth in these communities so that they can continue to recycle these dollars and also patronize products that stimulate the economy that helps all of our bottom lines from a corporate perspective. And so I really thought that as we talk about supplier diversity and taking it to the next level, that's more what we need to focus on. Yes, we definitely want to give our diverse suppliers an opportunity to compete. That's what supplier diversity professionals do, or one of the things that supplier diversity professionals do. But at the end of the day, what is the goal? What are we trying to focus on? And I truly believe that that's building true wealth. So we talked about strategic alliances. And so looking at it, wanted to kind of define what strategic alliances are. And it's a form of an affiliation that involves a mutual sharing of resources for the benefit of all strategic partners without a change of control. So as I mentioned before, we used to talk about diverse suppliers partnering with each other in order to grow their capacity. But now more and more we're seeing diverse suppliers partnering with Fortune 500 corporations or majority-owned firms in order to grow their capacity and or leverage, again, that operational excellence that we discussed. Here are 3 examples of fabulous and successful models. Johnson Bryce was established in the mid-1990s, and this was a joint venture with Bob Johnson and Bryce Corporation. It was a packaging company, and they did a lot of business with PepsiCo, and that company grew over to $25 million in revenue and ended up employing over 100 people. When we talk about CPA firms, accounting firms, oftentimes the larger ones, tend not to be as diverse, but KBL LLP, which was a minority certified regional CPA firm, and they had over 90 professionals, a pretty decent sized firm, but they partnered with a top 25 national CPA firm that had over 600 professionals. Could you imagine the effect that that could have on the bottom line? Finally, Mastech was one of the largest Hispanic-owned companies in the U.S., and it engaged in strategic alliances, mergers, and acquisitions. It ended up with more than $1 billion, that's billion with a B, in revenues. So just the power of what strategic alliances can do in moving the needle is just proved evident through these examples and many others. So what are the benefits of strategic alliances? And we've kind of highlighted some of them, but we talk about leveraging operational excellence. Why reinvent the wheel? Fortune 500 companies do it every single day. They realize what their core competencies are and what they aren't, and then they outsource to those that they aren't, or they acquire and bring that in-house. MWBEs are able to grow without a huge investment in capital, and sometimes that really helps out. We're able to drive competition in sectors where it's needed. So oftentimes you've heard of sole source in a strategic sourcing organization, and oftentimes for your strategic sourcing professionals that is the worst thing because you can't bid it out because you only have a sole source and there's only one person that can quote-unquote. How better to drive competition than to create a minority-owned firm or help leverage one and help them grow so that they too can be a competitor in there and ultimately drive down costs in your organization. And then again, you can hit the ground running with infrastructures, credibility, and capacity. This oftentimes helps you become a game changer. Again, driving competition, employing minorities, employing urban community members in areas where there currently weren't any. So then we talk about private equity and what it means to invest in a minority-owned firm. We often talk about how access to capital is still a huge limiting factor for the growth of MWBEs. Private equity funds are an excellent way for MWBEs to get the operating capital they need to grow their capacity. Comparisons suggest that minority-oriented funds outperformed both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 stocks for a certain period that study was done. And we always got to remember that 51% of something is more than 100% of nothing. It still creates jobs, it still builds wealth. And at the end of the day, that's our goal. Again, we need to shift the paradigm from helping the minority entrepreneur to creating jobs with livable wages. Oftentimes we're faced with the question, why should we help Magic Johnson? He is a famed Hall of Famer basketball player, obviously a very successful businessman. But the key is that you're not helping Magic Johnson. What you're doing is giving Magic Johnson Enterprises the opportunity to compete in order to create jobs in urban communities, in order to create wealth, in order to recycle dollars. And keeping that end game in mind, I think, will really help us as we move forward. There we go, benefits. So what are the benefits of investing in minority-owned firms from a private equity standpoint? When we look at the average venture-backed company, it employs nearly 100 workers within 5 years and creates almost twice as many jobs as their non-venture-backed peers. That's a huge statistic. It shows that they're going to be here, that when you enter into a contract with a supplier and make them a part of your supply chain, that they're going to be there. They're not going to go away. Venture-backed firms experience at least 40% job growth each year as compared to a 2.5% decline in jobs for Fortune 500 companies. Sales per employee grow twice as quickly for minority-owned businesses as for Fortune 500 companies, growing at an average of 16.5% as opposed to 7.9% for the largest firms. Private equity-backed firms in the minority business community are key catalysts to drive wealth building. I think that we really have to focus on the fact that they're also giving better internal rates of return for those of you that are really into the finance world. We're seeing on average a 29% internal rate of return for these venture and private equity funds. And that, again, really helps grow that capacity. So when you have that supplier that's part of your supply chain that you wish could go global, that you wish could have that multi-million-dollar national contract, but they really don't have the capacity, by them getting some monies from a private equity fund that focuses on minority entrepreneurship, it can really not only assist them grow their business and their capacity, but then help keep you stable within your supply chain. And in closing, sorry, I went too fast there on the slide. Partnerships, JVs, mergers and acquisitions happen every day in the Fortune 500. I think we've seen that over and over again, especially in these crazy economic times. They happen for a variety of reasons. Competition. Sometimes a smaller firm comes up. I think we saw that with MySpace when they got so competitive and then it got bought out by a majority firm. We see that often. Capacity. Again, we've talked about growing capacity and why partnerships and JVs happen. Product and service supplementation. Again, what's outside of your core competency but complements the services and makes you look more like a one-stop shop. These are all reasons to become a partnership or JV or merger and acquisition. MWBEs are now perfecting this business practice and its benefits and taking full advantage, as they should. And that's really helping them grow globally. Private equity-backed firms are key drivers to creating living wage jobs, and both of these trends are two that will help lead supplier diversity to build true wealth in diverse communities. So I just wanted to kind of put these 2 points out there as we start thinking about what it means to take supplier diversity to the next level. And as we dive in to the next presentations by our panelists and start getting our brains turning. All of you have definitely had great experiences, I'm sure, and maybe some more challenging ones, and we really want to make sure that this is an interactive discussion, a thought-provoking one, and really get that ball rolling. So I think first I'll take a few questions if anybody has any questions on what I presented. And then after that, I'm very excited to introduce Susan, and she's going to tell us about the fantastic things that are happening at Intel.
Again, if you'd like to ask a question via the web, on the left-hand side under Meeting Features, click on Question and Answer, type in your question and submit. You can also ask a question verbally by pressing *1 on your touch-tone phone.
So everybody's either shy or I'm just that good, which I think is probably the former and not the latter, and that's okay. It's early on, and you'll have plenty of time to ask lots of questions. So we will, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce Susan, which I am so excited to do. Susan Martinez she has 13 years of experience in the technology industry, both in procurement and supplier diversity roles. And currently, she leads Intel's Global Supplier Diversity Initiative. In doing so, she's focused on enabling the global procurement organization, sourcing solutions, reporting systems, business development programs for their incumbent diverse suppliers, on and on and on. Not only does she lead it now, but she helped start this thing. So she's been doing this for a long time and really got the thing started there at Intel. She joined Intel in 1996, and she's held various roles throughout procurement. And we're so excited to have her. She served on a number of corporate advisory boards, and she currently serves on the corporate advisory board for MSD China. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan. And Susan, we'd love to hear about what you're doing there at Intel.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And I'm trying to launch my, let me get it here, hold on. Just went to the wrong thing, sorry.
We can see it now, Susan.
Thank you. I apologize for that delay. So thank you very much for the opportunity to come in and share some of these key learnings. I am very passionate about supplier diversity, so I'll just jump right into it. So I wanted to just give you a quick overview of our company. We are operating in more than 50 nations, and we do have a very broad, diverse population of employees, customers, and suppliers. And we, like all the rest of you, are trying to find a diverse supply base as a part of our commitment to delivering our world-class products and services. And our success is a direct result of our investment. I mean, we have invested heavily in research and development in the world's best factories and in our people and communities. And our investment extends to our suppliers and our greater supply chain. We are committed to our corporate responsibility and sustainability where we live, work, and do business. And with that, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about supplier diversity inside Intel. The development of our supplier diversity program and initiative is a partnership between the program manager, procurement, and your company. And that involves more than achieving a percentage. It takes a lot of work to put a truly interactive program together. So I tried to create a little historical timeline for you so that I could speak to where we've come from and where we have evolved to and some of the key learnings that we got out of that. So our development model had three main components: adopt, evolve, and assimilate. I'll start with adopt. So adopt, it looked like a traditional program, which you are all familiar with the program models that we all have to, or strive to achieve, and the basic components. And we started ours formally in 1998, so we're fairly young compared to many other industries. And I guess we could use that phrase, we were storming and norming at that time. And we engaged in many organizations. We were going to every trade show possible, trying to influence all the internal stakeholders, engage the supply chain. We had some management interest, but really there was a lot of heavy lifting going on during this time period. And over those years, as we defined ourselves, we also recognized and realized the importance that eventually we would need a second-tier program. But we weren't performing to the goals that we thought we needed to be performing to. And a lot of those challenges came from our ability to analyze, where our trends were, where there was true opportunity, and what we could be doing differently. So we move into the evolve phase. And over that time, we got more leadership from management, and we started to identify and realize the importance of having a superior tracking and reporting system. And through the evolution, we were able to come up with our key procurement indicators that were realistic and achievable, and loved the management support because they were always challenging for a stronger stretch goal each year. And of course, all good employees try to achieve or exceed those stretch goals. And with that, we have some dedicated program resources. We had initially started, I think, with a team of 4 people, and we were now up to 7 full-time dedicated heads, just full-time working on supplier diversity. And it was during this time period that we created our first second-tier effort, although we were kind of hopping along, and I'll explain that to you later. During this time, we were also implementing a supplier development initiative. So that was in place of an internal mentorship program. We sought to develop our incumbent diverse suppliers and then reach the greater supply chain. We still remained active with the nonprofit organizations, and we also integrated with our sales and marketing group. And we leveraged their support to reach out through our supplier development initiative in reaching the greater supply chain. And during that period, we launched and were going throughout the greater U.S. delivering technology boot camps. Now that sounds like a how to use your software boot camp, but it was really geared towards the business owner and how they could leverage technology to expand their market, be more efficient in operations and so forth. So we got a lot of satisfaction out of that. And during this time period, we actually increased our performance to goals that through the advanced program we show the percentage of 8 to 10%, but we were actually performing better than that during this period. And then we moved into the assimilate period. And this is where we conducted an industry benchmark at the time. It was the first one that had ever been done for the semiconductor industry. And all the participants joined in, and we learned a lot about our industry and how it relates to supplier diversity at that time. It was very beneficial to us because we were able to really focus on program integration with specific commodities. And we also got additional executive level ownership. So with that, all that said, we were able to really look at our second tier program more robustly. Looks like I have a question here. Oops, I think I just clicked out.
I think you're fine. I think
okay.
We can still see it.
All right. For some reason, I'm not seeing. Okay, I see. So the question is, it appears that Intel followed the best practices model we all use to achieve our program goals. What would you do differently given today's economic challenges? Let me get to that in just a moment. I'm going to finish this up here, and then I think I'll jump right into that question. So with that, where I was at, we integrated into a part of the supply chain responsibility. Now, I think we all know that corporate buzzword today, corporate social responsibility, but we actually engaged this back in 2006, where we were integrating what we call supply chain responsibility. So with regard to this question, what would we do differently given today's economic challenges? I think the thing that we all have to look at and examine is the difference in business today versus what it was 30 years ago, a decade ago. We all have lean practices that we have to perform. We have to be more efficient. We have to show great ROI, which I'm looking forward to hearing Dan's presentation because he's got some really great information there to share. But I think the main thing is to be more streamlined and effective and focus on your true results. So is your focus that you have to meet federal reporting requirements? If it is, then you really need to streamline your reporting. If it's to work and collaborate with your customers and achieve results that they're requiring of you, again, your performance to goals and indicators are going to be key to your success. So I think the thing that I would do differently given the current environment is be very selective about my interface externally with multiple organizations and really align with those organizations that fit your objectives directly. I think in the beginning when you're storming and norming, you tend to just kind of reach out to everyone thinking that that's the solution, but in the end, it's really going to lead to the perception that you're a philanthropic organization rather than an organization that's trying to achieve results. So I think it's important to stay focused on that. So when we applied all three of these components, we grew, we became more successful, and we've thrived in our program, and so did our suppliers. During the course of this period, we had diverse suppliers who actually achieved public status or employee ownership as classification, which in my mind is a real success because they really grew their company to a place, their next level of achievement, their next goals. I also am going to throw this little pitch out that the interactive PDF that I'm using today was designed by a diverse supplier that has been with our company for 25 years. So we have long-standing diverse suppliers that are really a contribution to our company overall. So with that, I'm going to jump into my data management quality section. So our operational systems are designed to support Intel's management and leadership expectations. You know, what are their expectations? They have to demonstrate strong business and strategic acumen. They've got to build strong and vital organizations, set the pace and execute, manage internal and external stakeholders, and lead with integrity. Well, how are they going to do that? They don't have enough time. They're doing a million things, and they've got this supplier diversity question that somebody's posing to them. How do they keep their finger on the pulse of that? How do they keep accountability with their leadership team? And that, I believe, is through data analytics. So we use currently an enterprise reporting and online analytical relationship processing software. Boy, that's a mouthful, which provides procurement and management with an instant snapshot of real-time information about our business. And below, I'm going to give you some examples of what the analytics look like or that are available to our procurement and senior management people, enabling integrated supplier diversity performance management. Now, built inside all of these reports is supplier diversity indicators. And we even have it broken down so that we can see those that are certified, those that are known to be diverse but not certified, or we don't know. So we have that ability to see to that level. But in our procurement reports, we can see contract details, so we can see purchase orders, invoices, and payment activities that analyze the percentage values and utilization. Why is that important? Because as your commodity teams or sourcing teams are out there making those key decisions, and you have an incumbent diverse supplier that may be coming up the realm, you know, it's your time to advocate for them. It's also visibility to show their past performance. We have a supply-based analyzer. Same thing. It gives you supply-based metrics, so you can see trends that are very important that could impact your goal performance. Transaction details, sourcing reports, and then, of course, the supplier diversity indicators. And this is very important and has been invaluable to me as a program manager because I'm able to see trends and forecast way ahead. One of the things that happened for me several years back was in doing benchmarking and heavy analysis, I was able to quickly identify a trend that I saw happening due to inevitable consolidation and optimization. And because of that, I was able to flag management way ahead of time so that we could make sure we had an effective plan in place that would not impact our current performance goals or those goals that we wanted to continue to achieve. And I'm going to go into senior management now. So the other thing that's really critical about having an effective enterprise solution is you're able to get operational reports and dashboards. This is very important because it gives the leadership or the executive management real-time data. They can hold their teams accountable, and they're also flagged should they start to see something trending away from what they wish to see. So this is a very invaluable tool. I can't speak enough to it. Unfortunately, I have a limitation of time, and I can see I'm quickly running out of it, so I'm going to skip on to the next question here. All right, and let's see here. I'm going to go into global evolution. So as I mentioned earlier, Intel, due to some analysis and some trends, we quickly saw the writing on the wall. Our business was heavily focused on emerging markets. We had a mature supply base in the U.S., so we knew that our market share opportunities lied outside the U.S. And as I analyzed all the data and I saw what was there, it was evident that being a multinational corporation that we needed to truly have a global program. And so with that, as we moved forward, we looked at what that looked like in our model that we had been performing to. And we are currently, or we have achieved accountability model. It's integrated into all of our processes. We have leadership from the top. It's tied to performance objectives. We have very advanced program tracking and measurement. We're still focusing on our primary supplier development, superior communications and marketing strategies. We have contributions to our market share and our stockholders, and we have a continuous cross-functional process for improvement teams. So as we evolve as a company, we're constantly evolving these tools, and that is what brings us into what I call next practices. So this is from here moving forward. And as we move into a global program, it's important for us to examine all of our data and trends so that we understand where the true opportunity is. Now, the other key is to ensure that international policies align with our data collection practices. This is a big component, given the legal concerns that are tied with the European Union. So you as a corporation have to make those decisions and based on what your business needs are. We were fortunate in that we don't have stringent government requirements as many of you do, so we adopted a standardized policy where we are not collecting ethnicity data. We are collecting only the diverse category data so that we feel we stay compliant within our privacy policies and our reporting is consistent. We want to evaluate and assess all the capabilities to incorporate international categories, track the spending, and validate and monitor certifications. That's a huge one right there. Very quickly, I'll just mention that through affiliation with several organizations that are focused on international certification, there's 5 new programs that are being activated in 2009 for women's certification. Internationally, they're just sprouting, and the big one I think that all of you would be interested in is the certifications that are now available in China for minorities. And that's a huge one because there's 55 ethnic minority categories in China. So I'm happy to share more details with anybody if they have a question moving forward. Looks like I've got some additional questions here. Hold on. Well, I'm not seeing them, so I'm just going to keep moving forward. With that, I think the final point that I'd like to make is how important it is to engage. And this is a key, in my opinion, into the success of global evolution. We all have the responsibility to drive awareness about supplier diversity. Supplier diversity is still, in many ways, a foreign concept in other countries. And so it is important for us to deliver the value message through the international supply chain. And I think this ties back very poignantly to what Christine was mentioning about joint ventures, because I see great opportunity there. The U.S. suppliers already have this acumen of dealing with corporate America and their multinational corporations, and joint ventures is a natural next step for them to evolve to. And then on top of that, I think it's important to align any organization affiliates you support as a vehicle to extend your span of influence and industry collaboration driving international policies and practices around supplier diversity. I think I'm probably out of time here. I don't know if I have anything left in the queue.
So actually there are a few things in the queue, and we do have, I think, about 10 minutes for question and answers. I just want to make sure that you got through your entire presentation before we jump into those questions.
Thank you.
To kind of summarize, it sounds like, I mean, first of all, congratulations. A phenomenal evolution, obviously, in building a program and really taking it through the different stages that we're all very much familiar with. But I mean, the fact that you guys are, very close to a world-class program already is an amazing accomplishment, and I'm sure you're very proud to have seen it from the beginning. So to kind of summarize, some of the key points that you hit on were, really leveraging other parts of your organization, such as your sales and marketing teams, to reach your greater supplier communities, the importance of benchmarking as you go, and then as you grew, making sure that your outreach was strategic, both internally and externally, and making sure that you stay focused as you do so to ensure the best results of your efforts. Also, the importance of business reports and dashboards, and how that data can really drive some of your key initiatives, but you have to make sure that your data is actionable and that you're collecting the right data for the right report and for the right purpose. I think I also heard you say how important it is to analyze what your market share is and where your market share is to evaluate that, and that can help you build the business case for driving your program globally. And then finally, the importance of carrying the value proposition into these other countries as we go forward, and making sure that you're engaging and staying in line with the local requirements and laws and cultures and norms. Does that sound about right?
Excellent job.
No, you did an excellent job. So I'm sure if we want to go through these questions, I think you guys were going to read them off for us.
I see them right now.
You see them? Okay, good.
Okay, so I have a question here. When you saw the trends, what strategies were implemented to counter? I think the main strategy was going back and looking at the commodity analysis data. When we have those commodity subgroup analysis reports, we were able to go in and see historically where we felt we had the greatest opportunity. And simultaneously, as we started to survey our international suppliers to learn who was diverse based on country definitions and acknowledgments, we were able to start trending and tracking international spending. Now, we're not adding that to our goals yet because we still need more data and trending to understand what that really is, but we are definitely moving in that direction. And I think the main thing was just knowing the changes that were coming ahead in our strategic long-range planning so that we could adjust accordingly, whether it be through our consolidation efforts and how we were going to integrate our existing incumbent suppliers. I'll give you another quick example. I know everybody's familiar with the 80-20 rule. You want the 80% of the spend and the 20% removed. So what we did is, in utilizing several unique approaches with aggregators and integrators, we were able to adopt and not lose any spending there by getting them to align with our second tier program and do direct reporting for us. We're just now starting to track and trend that information. It looks impressive from what I've seen so far. So I feel like because we were proactive, we did not lose any momentum there, even though we're trying to perform procurement best practices and embedded in that supplier diversity best practices. I have another question here. I was curious about your work with the NGLCC. That, for those of you that don't know what that acronym is, that's the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. Have you been able to integrate gay and lesbian-owned companies into Intel Supplier Diversity Program? If so, how, and what are some key learnings you could share with us? Well, I can tell you that we do have certified LGTB suppliers in our supply chain. And as we approach all diverse categories, it's sort of the best suppliers win. And in the tiebreaker, if you are diverse, you're probably going to win the business. We don't set target goals for any of our diverse categories. So I can't say there was a specific strategy applied here as much as it is a part of our accepted inclusion. So really what we're looking for is the category and if you have a certification. And so I think it's unique to each company and how they approach it. That's Intel's approach. So I'm happy to say that we mirror our policies for employees and suppliers. And I have a final question here. No, that's a repeat, sorry. Okay, so this is in regard to revamping our systems to manage data. It says there was heavy lifting for IT. What has been the ROI achieved for supplier diversity? Well, I think the most evident is that it's real-time visibility in front of leadership and management to make sure that we are a results and performing organization. So it's not dependent on individuals because it's built into the system. As quickly as accounts payable is paying out, we can see that tied to our supplier information immediately, and we're able to see how we're performing. If we start to see a yellow trend on a dashboard, trust me, it's quickly addressed, and there is accountability there. So I think the greatest ROI has to be with the efficiencies gained and the resources that are no longer required to do something that technology can manage for you. And then I have one final question here.
One.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. What measures do you take to balance consolidation efforts, i.e. reserve certain commodities for diverse suppliers, or do you mean that instead you put more effort into second tier? Actually, I'd say it's probably a little bit of both. We don't reserve commodities, but it is evident what commodities have more opportunities, specifically in the semiconductor business, because all the silicon comes from Asia, and we haven't identified that Asian silicon provider yet either. That would be, we'd never need another supplier again. But there's sort of a focused effort, and because we have commodity champions, they are specialized in knowing what their roadmap strategies are, their sourcing strategies, so we're always able to factor in the impact or the results gained with regard to supplier diversity in those categories. So I think it's the sourcing team's focused ability to examine this, and then I also think in the case where we switched to one integrator and one aggregator, we were able to influence them to not lose spends where we had historically, but to transition it to a second tier effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. That was absolutely excellent. Thank you so much. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Dan Robinson. Dan has 39 years of experience in business with a specific concentration on materials management, and this includes things from everything from inventory management, purchasing, contracting, product cost engineering, finance, and market access. His experiences include both domestic and global markets, as I mentioned earlier, and currently he manages the Xerox Corporation's market access strategies for small business and supplier diversity. These market access activities include countries, he supports countries including South Africa, Brazil, Canada, and England. Mr. Robinson holds his MBA from his MBA in Executive Development from the University of Rochester Simon Business School, and he earned his BA from Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Robinson. Sir, thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. I know I probably stand in between your time and listening to me and going home. So I will try to be as concise and clear as possible. What I want to talk to the group today about is a global market presentation that zero ins on what are some of the drivers, what are we doing here at Xerox, and what our supplier base is all about, and just exactly how do we see our diverse supplier base. I'll begin the presentation with the drivers on supplier diversity. And when we think about the drivers on supplier diversity, we look at the chart that shows the population growth. I think we all are aware that at some time in the future, 2040, 2050, the minority population most likely will eclipse the majority population. Now, I know I probably won't be around, and maybe many of you will or will not be around, but that's what they tell us that's going to happen. So in preparation for that, many companies like Xerox is aware and certainly are looking at strategies as how to lay a foundation and move into that direction. We also know as the population increases, so will the purchasing power of the minority groups. We're seeing evidence today in 3 key large states, Texas, California, and certainly in Florida. Now, in this thing called global markets, there is a requirement to do business. If you understand where the demographics are headed and the purchasing power are headed, then there is this notion to say, then how do we play in the various marketplaces on a global basis? First, there's an understanding, a need to understand what's there. In certain countries like Brazil, balance of trade certainly is key, imports and exports. National integration in Europe as it relates to, are you going to just come in and take profits out of here, or are you going to leave some infrastructures and build some infrastructure, such as manufacturing plants, hiring local people, as well as buying from the local communities? That's your national integration. In Canada, as we all know, Canada has come on very strong as it relates to visible minorities. And certainly the Aboriginals have been around for quite a while. But now we have and are playing in that market space where it is very important to Xerox Corporation and many, many other corporations, not only certainly corporations there in Canada. Of course, here in the States, we have our minority women and other diverse groups. This thing called environmental, everything is going green. With the rain that many of us are getting here on the East Coast, we see a lot of green now, and I'm very proud that we are seeing that. Too many times here in Rochester, we've seen the snow. So that's going. Excellent weather. But we look at local content. That is extremely important in determining what are the requirements. Folks in England could care less what's going on in France or Germany. They want to know what values, what infrastructure will you put in place in my community. So it is about country, state, county, cities, and some other geographical considerations. Now, having laid that as a foundation, the demographics, how to do business requirements, then you have to take a look at where's the senior management leadership team? What's their thoughts? What's their understanding? And what do they want to do in terms of behaving corporately responsible? Well, we got an excellent team here, as you can see. Probably one of the fewest companies that have 2 ladies at the top, and one we're very proud to say, not because of her ethnicity, but because the great person that she is, most recently became our new CEO, Ursula Burns. There's the rest of my organization's family, and it's a good team, and it's been a very effective team in helping provide leadership and moving the Xerox Corporation in a very, very diverse and effective manner. Now we're going to turn to market access, supplier diversity. What's our mission and the objectives? When we look at the mission, we look at what does it take for us to understand the requirements and the demographics. Our mission is to support market access by identifying geographical legislative requirements. That again is back at the local content. And in doing that, from a diverse supplier base, we want to make sure that supplier base is certified and certainly qualified to support us. We look at something like $5 billion in revenue as it relates to bid proposals that we get involved with, not only on a federal level, but also on state, city, and commercial, private sector. Our objectives are very clear. We provide a number of assistance in supporting our customers internally as well as external. We have key commodities that we bring to the table, which we identify. We provide communications and training to many of our customers, not only within our Xerox world, but also external. More importantly, we conduct business assessments and evaluate the effectiveness of what we're doing as it relates to our strategies. And as someone would say, if you can't measure it, then it's not worth doing. We do have measurements and certainly report our performance on a regular basis. The scope of what we do is global, and we do have outreach and presence in the U.S., Canada, Brazil, the UK. We even had some discussions with people in France as well as in China. And we have had some discussions over the years with people in South Africa. And we haven't started Australia yet, but that's one that's being planned to look at. And again, it's back at the global markets, where you want to play and how you want to play. These are the investments that we look at in terms of what will it mean to Xerox, not just today, but also for the future. The key deliverables that we look at is what is the voice of our customers. For us, that means delivering a Tier 1 solution. And that Tier 1 solution is how to provide the customer with a diverse solution whereby that diverse supplier is prime and Xerox takes on a subcontractor's role. We've been doing that now for over 10 years, and certainly we've seen where it has created more opportunities for us, more growth, and certainly a sustainability in our customers' base. We also provide business support to roughly some 235 major accounts, and that includes both the private and public sector. And as I stated before, you can't do a job like this unless you have certified and qualified diverse suppliers supporting you. Our spending since the beginning of our formal 1985 is over $7 billion today. And this past year, 2008, we did $400 million. This activity on the Xerox Market Access Supplier Diversity, it is deployed in our objectives, our senior management, and it's cascaded throughout the organization. And if you ever get a copy or looked at the Xerox annual report, you will find that the supplier diversity activity is among many of the objectives and results that we display. In our market access 3 years objectives outlook, as you can see, we're into the double digits. And we do have stretch goals. As I stated earlier, it is important for us to make certain that we can measure what we say we do. And of course, these strategies must have enablers. And this is very key to any strategy that you have. To have goals, to have strategies, and no enablers certainly is a recipe for disaster. Our 2009 annual plan will continue to show a customer focus, having a very predictable model in terms of what we bring to the table to support our sales force, our procurement people, how flexible this process is as it relates to meeting the objectives and whether we are very responsive to those requirements. And of course, we want to be very fast, quick cycle time in moving our process throughout the Xerox world. And is this process affordable? Have your staff, budget, and system? Of course, in 2009, this is a very challenging thing for Xerox today, just like it is with many, many other companies. Some things that you were able to do from a budget affordability standpoint might have been reduced, but it doesn't stop the compassion and the initiatives that we put forth in meeting the objectives. Lots of things can be done from a virtual standpoint. And finally on this plan, we look at what is rewarding. Have we the professional skill sets and certification? Do we have Six Sigma and energized corporate steering committee? The objectives that we set in this corporation is that everyone must have some level of Six Sigma. And that also is consistent with my staff and myself. Now, when we think about, well, what model are you using? It has been said many, many times, we might do things a little differently than some of the traditional supplier diversity companies in terms of their practices. Well, somewhere around 1998, we made the investment that it's great keeping numbers, talking about your performance as it related to your supplier diversity goals and how you achieve on those goals. But it's much more than taking that data and putting it into a file cabinet somewhere or storing it in the computer. So it has to be much more than that. And that much more came about as a result of what are the bottom lines for this corporation? Well, one of the key bottom lines for this corporation on the marketing sales side is revenue. And certainly on the procurement side, it's about cost savings, and certainly the other objectives are equally important. So we moved from just having a traditional model on procurement, but we also integrated the process into our market sales arena. And that is why we call it, excuse me, Xerox Supplier Diversity Market Access. When you look at the performance of our suppliers and how they measure a rate with our general population of suppliers, we have learned over time that our diverse suppliers are certainly very competitive, very capable, and their delivery of the objectives that we set has been outstanding. This first graphic on cost savings reflects the point that our MBEs, as well as our WBEs, outperform the general population. What this indicates is the traditional stereotypes that we hear or have heard, cost too high, quality no good, and so on. We don't experience that in our overall general MWBE veteran population of suppliers. And when you remove the MBE performance from the general, our general performance suffers. There is a return on investment, and it does affect the bottom line by having a diverse supplier base in place. And as we look at the next graphic on the quality aspects of our business, we see a very similar trend as we saw on cost savings, and that trend shows that the MBEs, same as our WBEs, would outperform the general population. And again, if you remove that from this graph, you will see the general population is worse off. And again, this is not something that just happened in 08, but this has been tracked for a period of time. And that's a performance and the investments that we have made in our supplier base, not only from the procurement side, but also in our sales arena side, has been one that we are very pleased with. Now, this does not say that there are not suppliers that are underperforming. But what it does say is when you look at the average performance in those populations of the diverse suppliers versus the general supplier, we're seeing excellent results. The next set of slides that I do have is one that was supplied to us in terms of one of our minority vendors. And they finding that as we make investment with our suppliers, they too are involved with Six Sigma. One of Xerox's key strategies in both the supplier diversity arena as well as our market access, marketing sales arena is that Six Sigma is an extremely important tool to what we do. And I'll just briefly go through the Six Sigma slide where it basically said always begins with the ABCs, having a strategic roadmap, make certain that you understand the benchmarks in the areas, locations that you're doing business in, and certainly bring innovation to your process, looking at your QCDs, whether there are mistakes in your process, proofing, your overall workflow. And it's not just geared to manufacturing. Six Sigma is a tool that can be practiced in every aspect of the business. So what does this represent? It represents a bottom line understanding that when we use our diverse suppliers, they are considered to be some of our best partners. They help us win and grow. They know their benchmark gaps. And as you saw on some previous charts, they have performed extremely well. Many of them are innovative, which is part of their DNA. And you see it when the work comes out from their operations. They create inclusive culture of quality and speed. I've seen over the years that I've been with Xerox, as the chart indicated, their quality is excellent. I have many of my MWBE suppliers have delivered 0 parts per million for years and have continued to do it. That is certainly great sustainability. Many of them are very strategic, and they certainly can get moving very fast. And as the statement below indicates, yeah, these are MBEs, and they bring some excellent value to the table. The other charts on what I'm showing relative to spend, as you can see, our actuals certainly has overachieved on the plan, on the minority end of it. The same thing exists on the female side of it, actual exceeded plan. So when you look at what I'm displaying here, and as I talked about the measurements and what it really means to Xerox Corporation, one thing that is very clear to us is supplier diversity is extremely important to us, and if we don't play, there's a downside to it, and those impacts are lost revenue opportunities. Many of you, like we do, put in our bid proposal terms and conditions that ask for diverse solutions. Many of you require sector tier reporting. Out of that comes recognition and certainly your credibility. If you want those two things, then you've certainly got to be there, outreaching, listening to the voice of your customers, and performing well. The other chart displays some of the awards and things that we have received when you do things right. And one recognition that we continue to be very proud of is the one that Diversity Inc. cites for the last 3 years or so, that Xerox has been its #1 diversity program. We're not going to show up on anybody's billion-dollar club because we don't have the spending to go there, but certainly on processes in terms of what we do and how we do, how our senior management leadership team is supported. Don't have a lot of money to spend on sponsorships and things like that, but what we do gear ourselves around, how do we play in the local markets, whether it's here in Rochester, New York, or someplace in the UK, someplace in France, Asia, wherever. We certainly want to be one of the leaders, if not the leader, in supplier diversity. So let's keep this conversation going and share the knowledge. I'm open for questions.
That was fantastic, Dan. Thank you so much. And you're right, we always see Xerox in that top list, and congratulations to you on that and all of those other fantastic awards that you shared with us. Just to kind of summarize, always on the top of all of our minds as supplier diversity professionals and those of us in the industry, the key drivers of supplier diversity continue to be the population growth and the GDP and the spending power of these populations and who are making those buying decisions, and your graphs illustrated that excellently. And I think that we have to continue to review that demographic data constantly, as sometimes it does change, but nonetheless I think it continues to further our business case over and over again. One of the key things that really spoke to me was talking about knowing your local area requirements and what are those key pressure points for each of those areas. Is it green initiatives and environmental? Is it really integrating, as you mentioned, national integration within Europe, or is it the and that we're seeing in Australia? So really understanding that as you grow your program globally and knowing what those nuances are as you enter those markets. You shared with us the importance of certification and qualification for the suppliers that you utilize in your program, and I think that's always going to be one of the foundations for all of our programs, and we have to continue to look at that. Something else that spoke to me was the fact that you often look at creating Tier 1 opportunities for your clients for NWBE spend, and I think being creative in that space, in doing so, looking at, okay, how can we make this more appealing for other corporations who have programs such as this is really key, and the fact that you guys are on the forefront of doing that really speaks to your program. I enjoyed the annual plan that you put forth with the customer focus. I think that really speaks to how each company, each organization has to determine what is that bottom line for you. Is it revenue? Is it risk mitigation? Is it, what is it, loss of credibility that really can drive you and help really create that business case and that value proposition for you, your customers, and thus your leadership that will help give you the support for your program overall. And while being predictable, flexible, fast, and affordable is also very important, you can't miss out on the fact that it still has to be rewarding, and that it is rewarding. And I think we're all really, we have a great opportunity to do a job that often is very much rewarding. Finally, looking at the importance of having strategic suppliers in your supply chain and what that means from an innovation standpoint and what they bring to the table. The fact that your suppliers know how important Six Sigma is to your organization, and the fact that they themselves represent that process and bring that additional innovation is key to your supply chain, to their success, and thus knowing that it really is a partnership and it has to be a win-win. So thank you for all of those great points in your presentation. And yes, let's open up for questions for Dan and for any of the presenters.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for this great presentation. Xerox identified Tier 1 solution as a key deliverable to supplier diversity. Can you expand on how the Tier 1 solution enabled sustainability and revenue opportunities for Xerox?
Yes. That provides, the Tier 1 solution provides certainly a customer focus, which I shared with you in the presentation. And it keeps us focused on what is it the customer wants, and can we deliver on it. It also enhances our relationship management with our customers and supports our overall corporate objectives, those being certainly revenue opportunities, certainly maintaining costs and building the community-based awareness, and certainly creating wealth and job opportunities not only for our customers and the very suppliers, but also for Xerox as well. Tier 1 has been an excellent business model for us, and I've seen where many of our customers, for whatever the reasons, their involvement with supplier diversity, have a very insatiable appetite to want to do things very similar to where we are, and that's certainly creating business opportunities for themselves. Okay.
If you'd like to ask a question over the phone, please press star, then the number 1 on your touch-tone phone.
I do have some questions I'm looking at, but I'm having a little difficulty in bringing them up to the big screen so that I could see them. If there's some assistance you can provide, I certainly would appreciate so I can get on those questions right away.
The questions that I'm seeing, and Erica, please correct me if I'm wrong, are still those left from Susan's presentation. Do you see any others?
Okay.
I'm curious, Dan, with all of your global initiatives, and we heard about Susan's large team, how large is your supplier diversity team?
On a direct basis, it comprises 3 people. On an indirect basis, probably add another 7 to 10 people, and certainly around the States, and certainly 1, 2 in Canada, a couple over in the UK, in Holland, and the others sprinkled in the China location.
Oh, that's great. That's a phenomenal global team. And Susan, how many of your team members are located abroad?
Well, with our sustainability and through all the transitions that we've been through, just as of a month ago, I am the one direct head left. And I have an indirect team of 12 people. And because they are global sourcing people, I have people in China, in the UK, and in the US, and in Ireland.
Gotcha. And I think we often see, we used to joke on my former supplier diversity team that we're trying to work ourselves out of a job, and now we're trying to integrate supplier diversity so seamlessly within the sourcing process that the sourcing professionals themselves just do it by nature, and thus there isn't the need for supplier diversity professionals. And so in our ideal world, that's where we would be. So the fact that you are the one direct headcount, and both you and Dan have the indirect kind of tentacles out there that are your network, I think is kind of the way we're going and the way we're able to leverage resources in these tough economic times.
Right.
Let's see. There is a question. Let's see. Okay. Xerox has reached out to the global market within supplier diversity. Have you noticed within the last 5 years an increase in awareness, acceptance, and participation within the global markets, Dan?
The answer is yes, a tremendous amount that we have become aware of. And as I indicated in my presentation, we have seen that quite a bit in other market space. In Canada, they are now putting in many of their bid processes that crosses my desk as well as my interactions back with my marketing sales people and the purchasing people there, where we are providing support to them. A global company, customers, today at 12, yesterday at 2 o'clock, I was involved in global discussions where in their bid processes, one in the UK, one in France, and certainly one that had some implications in China. The discussion came up, how does Xerox play in these markets from a, let's see what term did they use, an underutilized, disadvantaged business perspective. So this awareness is very much wide open. And I can go back in the time, back in the mid-90s, when I used to stand up before my purchasing group and do presentations on supplier diversity, and many, many times the guys who would come over from Europe and Asia, they would have a little snicker in their looks when I mentioned supplier diversity because they had no knowledge of it, and certainly they believed it was just a USA thing. You see the French turning around and saying that they want supplier diversity. And when you see that happening in places like China and elsewhere, we know this is not just a USA thing. This is global because suppliers that have been disadvantaged, whatever their colors or their ethnicities are, there is a need to do business with them. And they bring purchasing power to the table that enable many of these global companies revenue opportunity set. While we have it really from a civil rights perspective, but many companies are having it also, not from that perspective, but also from an economic and certainly from a local business imperative perspective.
Sure. Thank you for that, Dan. We actually have 2 more questions here. I'm going to start with the shorter one. Let's see. Susan, please expand on the certifications in China that can be counted towards supplier diversity spend by U.S. corporations like Intel.
Absolutely. There are 2 certifications recognized by MSD China. The first one mirrors much like what we're all used to, the 51% owned and operated. And as I mentioned, there are 55 ethnic categories there. So, you know, they have to prove they are of the tribe that they say they are, and the certification transpires. The second is a little more interesting. This was adopted and agreed to by the MSD board, as well as cooperation with the Chinese government, where it is based off of a 5-year plan. And to enter this certification, you must have 30% of your managing staff of your company who fall within those categories, those ethnic minority categories. And over the course of the 5 years, you eventually reach a growth to a increase of 50% managerial operation employment status. And that's a very interesting one. It hasn't been achieved yet, but it's out on the table. So right now the efforts around the ethnic minority categories, if you want more information, you definitely can reach out to that organization. It's msdchina.org, and they are an affiliate of NMSDC.
Excellent.
And then on a final point, the women's organization that's international that's handling certification has announced that the women's certification in China will be available as of November this year.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So progress is being made.
Very good. And it looks like you're one of those lead ambassadors driving that charge towards progress. So thank you. I think so. There was another question that was rather lengthy, and in the essence of time, I think maybe we can have Sigrid. Maybe we can send that to our panelists via email and share it with everyone.
Be happy to do that.
Okay. All right. So sorry that we weren't able to get to that last question. We kind of want to wrap it up for closing statements. So Susan, I'll give you the floor first if you just kind of want to close with some closing thoughts on how we take supplier diversity to the next level.
Well, I think we are all ambassadors, and I mean, it's people like Dan who have been out there paving the road for all of us for a long time, but I think we're all pioneers in an effort to embrace world economy. And, to the point that Christine made earlier, it really is in the end about building economic growth and development around the world to support those communities and to support our corporations and to support everyone. So, I'm available and open to assist anybody at any time, answer any questions, and I would hope that it would be a two-way street. And I thank you for the opportunity to participate today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Susan. Dan, your closing thoughts on how we keep going and keep progressing and keep moving this forward?
Yes. Continue your passion and certainly have some compassion for what you're doing. It's all great work, and if you think that on occasions that you may not be appreciated for doing it, believe me, there are a number of folks that you serve, and the way that you're serving them are very well appreciated. I have learned that you don't have to look too hard to get appreciation. It's right next door. So maintain that compassion and continue the challenge in moving supplier diversity, and certainly make certain you're keeping in line with the corporation's goals and objectives.
Thank you for that, and I definitely, as a member of the minority business community, echo those sentiments that your efforts as a supplier diversity professional and coming from that side of the house, knowing that oftentimes it feels like a thankless job, but know that it is greatly appreciated and that you all continue to open doors for minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and all of those whom you serve in your programs, and it is definitely appreciated. I think some of the resonating themes from today are continue to challenge, continue to push, blaze trails, do things differently, think differently, look at it as you would with a Fortune 500 company and how we move the needle the same way you would with your diverse minority supplier organizations that you're working with. Do it with passion, as Dan so eloquently said, and never give up. And with that, tread through these processes with knowledge of the nuances that are needed as we serve as ambassadors and grow this effort globally. And I think that is truly going to help us take this to the next level. So with that, I really want to thank our panelists for all of their valuable insights today. And we appreciate Diversity Best Practices for putting this on and putting it together and continuing to deliver to us this valuable information.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, everyone, for participation. As a reminder, all these presentations will be available on the DBP Home Members site, so that our members-only access site will have these posted for your future references. We look forward to seeing you at our next session, if you'll be able to make it, as well as in October. Our next session, as a reminder, is July. Starts off on the 28th, concludes on the 29th, and our summit and gala will be on October 6th and 7th in Washington. Thank you so much, and good afternoon.